different destinations, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Gregory Nicolaou. He is volunteering his time for QFKC and partnering with us to present these 6 sessions over the course of the year. And we can't be any more grateful for Gregory's time. Gregory works for the Australian Childhood Trauma Group, is the founder of that organisation, and has spoken at many conferences for QFKC over the years. He's always, the way in which he presents and how he provides real life situations and scenarios is so well received from carers and from workers, and certainly from staff from QFKC. So we're really appreciative to have Gregory join us today. So the second series is around getting started, preparing your mind and body care. So just a few housekeeping before I hand it officially over to Gregory. The presentation will go for about an hour. And there will be time for questions afterwards. You'll see that Danny has the microphones are not able to be turned on. That's purposeful because we need to allow the presentation to take its course, but you will have the opportunity to ask questions through the chat function, and there has been time allowed at the end of this webinar for questions. So it is being recorded, so I do need to remind everyone of the confidentiality and to please, when asking questions or referring to personal circumstances, to ensure that any identifying details for any person is withheld. So without any further ado, I will hand it over to Gregory and hope you all enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Carissa and Danny. It's lovely to be here, even if it is cyberspace. Just for all of you Queenslanders, I'm way down here in Melbourne. It's about, now it's, I was saying to Danny, it's 14 degrees, it's now 13 degrees. And our top tomorrow is going to be 14 degrees. So I don't know what the bottom is going to be, sort of minus 200 or something like that. But it is a little bit cold, but that doesn't matter. In fact, there is some research that says when living in colder climates, you get more done than those who work in hotter climates. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the further north you go in Australia, people start to sort of lay back a little bit in their swinging chair or hammock or something like that. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but you'll let me know. In terms of what Carissa was saying about questions, if you absolutely are busting to ask a question because of something I'm saying, then what I'd invite you to do is to write it in the chat. And I'll have Danny or Carissa interrupt me and say, and which is okay, I'm okay with that. Carissa and Danny, you can interrupt me and say, hey, there's a question here that someone wants to answer based on what you're saying. I'm happy for that to occur. But as Carissa said, at the end, we've got a significant period of time for you to be able to fire questions at me. And I don't mind questions. Well, they don't only have to be questions. You might want to present to me a challenge about something that I've said, or you might just want to make a statement or share a story. I'm perfectly okay with that, but as Carissa said, let's just be mindful of confidentiality. Now I'm going to share my screen, or I better say, a message has just come up. That's all right, recording's happening. Share my screen. Push that button. You'll be looking back at yourselves. Now, here we go. And click that button. Now, everything being equal, oops, I've clicked the wrong button already. Let's escape. Oop, escape. Start again. I've got to look right up here to make sure there, that's the right button. There we go. So hopefully on your screen, you'll see something that says creating hope, healing and change. Every child has the right to feel safe and to thrive. And that's the most important part of the screen. Every child has the right to feel safe and to thrive. And so this series of seminars is a bit about that, which I'll speak about in a moment. But Carissa's already done an acknowledgement of country. I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm standing on, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Great Kulin Nation, and pass my respects to elders past and present. So getting started. Now, some of you have been carers possibly for 10, 20, 30, 40 and beyond years, and some of you may have just begun to be carers. So those who've been carers for 30 or 40 years, after I've given my presentation, you might be saying, well, why didn't they tell us that 30 or 40 years ago? And I'm terribly sorry if they didn't, but it's never too late to get started with something new. It's never too late. And tonight's a bit about a carer's guide to looking after harmed children. There are 6 in the series. If you didn't see the first one, which I think was Mad, Bad or Sad. I can't remember if we did Mad, Bad or Sad or Thinking Mind, Reptilian Brain. I'll have to go back and I think it was Mad, Bad or Sad. Was that right, Carissa? Carissa's nodding at me. Yes, fantastic. If you didn't see that first one in the series of 6, I would invite you to go along and look at that recording after tonight sometime before you come to go to number 3 in the series, because I've developed this series of 6 to sort of run sequentially at the right time. They sort of build on each one that has come before, and I think you'll find it helpful when we start talking about things to have seen what went before. So what are we going to do tonight, or today it says? The first question I want to ask is, why do I care? And ask you to ask this question, why you care. Why did you decide to become a carer? Or if you're a person, if there are workers out there, why did you decide to become a carer? The answer to this question, I think, is really important, and we're going to spend a few minutes just thinking about that. I want to introduce you to this notion of you becoming the water on the fuel and not the fire, because ultimately, if we're going to create environments where kids can heal from their adverse childhood experiences, the adults around them need to be the water and not the fuel. I'm going to introduce also, some of you may have heard of this, the concept of Dadiri and its application out of home care. And particularly Dadiri comes from our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, the concept. I'm going to introduce Miriam Rose Ungabar, who has presented this concept. And in particular, there are some elements to Dadiri that I think have application when working with children and young people, and helps us to get in what I call the frame of mind to be able to do the work. And we're going to be talking a lot about the mind as opposed to the brain. I've actually got a slide that says, here's what the brain is and here's what the mind is. They're very different things. And I'm wanting you to understand that your best tool, and possibly the only tool you have to do healing work, is in fact your mind. But how you access your mind rather than your brain will possibly determine the outcomes for children and young people. Now, we are talking about a very dark subject. There's no way to sugarcoat this. You know, we're not talking about beautiful bunnies and marshmallows and things like that. We are talking about the darkness of what some human beings have done to other human beings, and what some human beings have done to very vulnerable human beings. And because we talk about the darkness, it doesn't mean we're being negative. In fact, I would go as far to say that being able to talk about the darkness, being able to be present with the pain of a child, keeps it real. Keeps it real. But it's not easy to do. Very often when a child is presenting very challenging behaviours to us, we want to, as quickly as possible, take away the child's pain. And often we do that by reacting rather than responding to what they're doing. And I want us to be able to think about how we can use our minds to be present with children without becoming reactive. Without becoming reactive. So here's the first question I have for all of you. I just want you to ask it of yourself. Why do I care? So you've got to say those words to yourself. Why do I care? You've got a bunch of kids. There they are. For those of you who have been to a seminar of mine or webinar of mine before, or come to a seminar, you would have seen this character on the left. That's me in about 1967, 68. Gold mining. We'd gone on a school excursion. And this is the young woman who I had the hots for all the way back then. I don't ever know what happened to her. I was almost thinking I'm going to get to hold her hand here. She's got her hand very close to me holding that gold mining thing. I've forgotten what they're called. But if you have a look at her eye line, she's actually looking at somebody else that's not in this photo, and there's another bloke. But anyway, my point is, when we look at children, they all look kind of vulnerable and they all look innocent. We don't know the circumstances of their life. And so you've decided to care. And so just for a moment, I'm going to stop sharing because I want to come back to me. So I'm going to ask you all to just think for a moment. We'll just take 60 seconds. Why did you decide to become a carer and or a worker? What was your motivation? And what I'd like you to do is to go into the chat function and for some of you to write down what brought you into caring, at least the conscious part of self that brought you into caring for children and young people. Again, I said, it doesn't matter whether you're a carer or a worker. If there's some workers here tonight, you're still caring for children or young people. What was your motivation? So Neville said to make a genuine difference. Yep, great. What else do we have? Just go into the chat function. If you're not sure where the chat function is, on most it will be up the top and it's got a little communication balloon and it says chat. Let's see, are we going to get any more? Does anyone else want to take a stab at why you've decided to care? Why do I care? It could be a trick question, who knows? We'll soon find out. By the way, if any of you would like to turn your cameras on, you can do that. You can go up to the camera function and so I can see some more of you. I can see Bella or Connie. There's a PT. I don't know who PT is. That sounds like physical education. Let's go do PT. There's Sue and Jenny. Hello there, Jenny. Nice to see you there. So we've got Joanne has said to give my grandson a better life. Fantastic. Jacob where's he gone? To provide a stable home. Fantastic. Connie, because if I do not care, who else will? Yeah, great question. If I don't care, who else is going to do it? We're getting a few more. Someone else is typing. It's actually interesting because when you're on here, you can see people typing. Hello, Caroline, and hello, young man. Nice to see you. How else have we got here? We've got, because I can't fix all the darkness, but I can light a candle in it. Hey, I love that, Deb. Yeah, really nice. Jenny, to care for my grandchildren and ensure they're safe. Yeah, safety is important. As I said, every child has the right to feel safe and to thrive. And one final one, Caroline's coming in with something. Just once you start typing, I'm going to read this. It's coming. Drum roll, please. Here it comes. Many children overseas needed help, but I knew many children in our own country needed caring for. Yeah, it's a really good concept. You know, when people are wanting to care for children, sometimes we're caught between, do we care for people outside of Australia? Do we care for people? Can we have a heart maybe big enough to care for both? Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again. I just want to talk a bit about this. So some of those answers, wonderful answers, good conscious answers, and the things that we kind of expect in terms of when we're thinking about the reason that we care. I'm just trying to, now my screen's not moving. Come on, move on. Why isn't it? We have, Houston, we have a technology hitch. There we go. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my story, and in fact, what I'm about to tell you, I've never told publicly before. So this is the first time I'm going to tell you about it, but I think it's an important story to tell, to put it in a context. I've been a psychologist for many, many years, and before I was a psychologist, I was an outreach youth worker. At about the age of 40 or 42, I decided that I would have a bit of a break. I just wanted to do something completely different right outside of the out-of-home care sector. So I thought, what could I do? So I applied for filmmaking at the Victorian College of the Arts to do the film at the School of Film and Television to do the director's course. And I did that. I got accepted and I started making movies. Now, the interesting thing, having said I want to get out of all of this, when I came to write the script that I wrote to make my graduation film, I sat there and I thought, what will I do? And I wrote the script and it just poured out of me. And lo and behold, the script was a story about a mother whose child had been removed from her and they had a chance encounter years later. And I thought to myself, how can that be? Here I was trying to have a break from working with children and trauma and everything, and there it blows, a script comes out of me and it's all about trauma and a child and so forth. If anybody wants to see the film, it's called Destiny's Child. If you put Destiny's Child, Gregory Nicolau in the Google search, should be a little film comes up in a little pink frame. Click on it and have a look at it. My point is, it made me start thinking about, well, why is this so? Why, after 20 years, because it was then 20 years I've been working in the field, was I still telling these stories? And then I realised my motivation to care was not a conscious motivation. I had that. All the things that you spoke about were the things that I thought about as a young man, that I wanted to give vulnerable people a better opportunity to care. I wanted to say, well, could I make a difference for children and young people? And it wasn't until I went through my own therapeutic kind of experience that I realised there's an unconscious process for some people, not all, for some people as to why they care. For me, it was this. I grew up in a family. I have 4 sisters and I'm the only boy. Some of you will be rolling your eyes at this point. But being the only boy and the youngest, so I'm the baby of the family. So we had 5 children. All of 5 children, including myself, at different points in our lives, were groomed. My 4 sisters were groomed by the local priest. And I was groomed at the age of about 7 or 8 by a chap who was involved in little athletics. Fortunately for me, on the day, and I'll tell you the event, so I'm warning you, if anyone doesn't want to hear this, then turn off your microphone, or, oh, not your microphone, that won't help. You'll hear me, but you won't, you just need to block your ears or do something. But I'm assuming as adults, you'll be able to hold what I'm about to tell you. I was walking through Chingford Park with 2 of my sisters, which is a place in Dunedin where I was born. There was a man standing in the Little Athletics Club clubhouse. He came to the door and said, "Hey, you're part of the Little Athletics Club, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes," honestly, but also feeling excited because an adult had actually spotted me and said, "Hey, I know you." So he said, "Oh, do you want to come play darts?" I thought nothing of it. My sisters didn't. They went on. He invited me into the clubhouse. And then for the next 2 or 3 hours, there was a sort of a dance going on. What I do remember is when he invited me into the club, and I can still hear it today, was the way that he snipped the door on one of those old brass locks, snipped it to lock the door. And it did, not so much in hearing of that, although, as I said, I can still remember it. And that is one of the reasons children can remember very clearly, sometimes not so much in the top part of their brains, but down in their reptilian brains, can be alerted to certain noises. We call them triggers. So when I hear that brass sound, it can trigger me to be back in that clubhouse. So he spent 2 or 3 hours, we were playing darts, asking me all sorts of things, and ultimately he wanted me, invited me to go to the bathroom and could he watch, and he was offering me darts and doing all sorts of things. I can remember feeling overwhelmed with very strong feelings of fear and anxiety. At some point, he must have realised I wasn't going to support him in what he was trying to achieve, and he ended up opening the door and letting me go. But I can remember very clearly the clubhouse, everything about it. It's imprinted in my brain. So that's one thing that happened as a child. I remember my 4 sisters and the events that happened around them in relation to the priest. But I also remember something else. My dad, who came from, born in Ioannina, Greece, but raised in Constanța, Romania. My father, who I loved and still love deeply, but he's passed on about 30 years ago. He came to New Zealand, and I now know that he had post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know it then. He went through World War II. He was held in a concentration camp. He escaped 3 times. Twice he got caught, and the 3rd time he got away. So he had some issues, and I knew that he could be quite volatile at times, particularly when he got anxious or was triggered by events. And I remember on one particular occasion when I was outside that my mum and dad had an argument, and he struck my mother. And to this day, I can still, when I go back to that time, what happened when they were fighting, I started bouncing a ball against the wall to try and shut out the noise. I still can feel the great amount of anxiety, and in particular, shame and embarrassment that I couldn't do anything to stop it. I was 7 years old at the time. The reason I'm telling you this story, and I'm just going to stop sharing again because I'd rather you see all of me. The reason I'm telling you this story is not to go pat, pat, poor Gregory and so forth, or to be angry at my father. My mum and dad resolved whatever it was between them at that time, but actually, interesting enough, I still don't know to this date what the argument was about. I could just hear the noises and the yelling and so forth. The reason I'm telling you the story is that I realised that those experiences I had as a child, my own childhood, somehow unconsciously motivated me to get into this business. And I'd never really thought about it. I never connected the dots. And yet, it seems to me it's really important that we know our own histories and story. So either we use them for best practice, and certainly we avoid using them to get in the way of the work that's necessary. Because the bottom line is this: if you do have any experience yourselves of some form of adverse childhood experience, and you're not aware of it, or not aware of the potential triggers, it will be played out when you care for another child, even as an adult. And it may get played out when you see children fighting with each other, and if your history happens to be some form of domestic violence, it may be you will react to those children either violently or become very afraid and anxious and close down. And this is the reason that I believe that when you become a carer, we have to understand that not just from the things that you said consciously, and I want to do the best for my kids, make sure they have a happy life and so forth, but that you also understand it from any internal experience that you have. Now, I hope that story makes sense to you in terms of the motivations, for me at least, unconsciously, and I'm no longer afraid to tell that story. I know there are children who have had many more experience of adverse conditions where it went on again and again and again for long periods of time. But what I do want to let you know is those feelings of shame and embarrassment, the feelings of being powerless, not knowing what to do, the feelings of fear and anxiety are very, very real for children who experience any kind of adverse experience. So let me go back to sharing again. Here we go. Hit that one. So that's about a bit about my story. So I'm actually offering you tonight to begin to think about, not about the conscious reasons you do this work, but some of the other things that might be part of your story. And the big reason for this is that if we're going to care for children, we want to ensure that our own histories don't dictate how we care, but we decide how we use our histories to help us to care for children. And that's a very, that's a big difference. Us being empowered to use our histories to help us in the way that we might care for children. So let's move on. Let's talk a bit about the water and the fuel in this process. As I said, tonight is really about getting you ready to do the caring, to get you in the best possible frame of mind so you can care for kids. Now, I said a bit earlier, I mentioned this, this dark work we do, it's painful work. It's not easy. And it's not easy to sustain longevity in the field, whether you're a worker, so I'm just having my cup of tea, whether you're a worker or a carer. So painful work means that we're in the presence of a child who has adverse experiences. They're likely to give out all sorts of energy to us. Now that energy can be scary, can be anxiety provoking, it can make us feel reactive, it can also make us feel like we have to hold the child and take away their pain. Ultimately, as I said, every child has the right to feel safe and to thrive. Now, oh, there's my cursor. So ultimately, I want us, both as carer, worker, but also as child, to be in this thriving space, not just to be in the surviving space. Now, what's the difference? somehow, with the families and infants and children, young people, adults that we might work with as we go through, move children through the care experience, if they are thriving, or in fact, even if we just think of mainstream kids or families, most will have, and if you came to the first seminar I ran, I think I talked a bit about this, I'm not 100% certain, most will have this great capacity for openness. What does openness mean? It means that your mind and body are open to experiences that you might have in the world. And the big ones for kids, of course, are learning and play. Kind of kids learn about the world through play and learning like school formal lessons or informal lessons they might have when they're playing football or netball or playing TIG with a group of kids in the playground. The only way you can have this great capacity for openness is that if the stresses, anxieties and worries in your world are quite small. So this little element I have here where it says capacity for openness, all the blue, that's the stuff you want in your life. The stress anxiety is quite low. And it is a bit like a seesaw. You kind of, well, maybe not a seesaw because that would suggest you go either or, but it is like if you were filling some sort of vessel and you had to mix it with sort of a petrol in a car. Here's the one, this is a better one. If you're putting petrol in the car, if you start putting water in there, if you put a little bit of water, it's probably okay. But if there's more water than fuel, your car's going to do all sorts of terrible things. Let's forget that analogy. I should have just stuck with the picture on, it happens sometimes, crazy stuff. But anyway, moving along. If you have reduced capacity for this openness, for learning and play, the chances are you have much higher levels of stress, anxiety and worry. Now, how does this fit with your sort of getting started to care? Well, the interesting thing is this is not just true for kids, but it's also true for workers, carers, teachers, police, prison officers, community, whoever's working with children. You have to develop the ability to have great attunement and reflection. Attunement is able to be focused in your work, and reflection is to be able to use your mind to think about what is it I'm seeing in relation to the child? What are they conveying to me? Now, I'm only going to be able to do that. I'm only going to be ready to care for a child if my own stresses and anxieties and worries are low. That's the starting point. If you have high stress, worries and anxieties in your life, the chances of you being able to give good care is going to be muchly diminished. Because stress, anxiety and worry engages the reptilian part of your brain, not your thinking mind, which I'll come to a little bit later. And so you need to think about, if I'm so stressed, how can I focus on the child? And if I'm so stressed, if I'm trying to focus on the child, how am I going to use my mind to decide what's best for the child right now if I am overwhelmed? So I say to carers and workers, you have to do something to ensure, if you do, and we all have stresses and anxieties and worries in our lives. Life is hard. Let's keep that in mind. It's hard. Caring for someone makes it even harder. But the point is, we have to find ways with which we can care for ourselves first. And that's one of the reasons I certainly say to carers, and I hear this from carers sometimes, oh, I haven't got time to do stuff for myself because I'm caring for this child. What I've learned over the years is that you need to ensure you make time for yourself to do the things that bring you joy. So then you do have the energy to focus and attune yourself to the needs of the child. Because if you're not providing yourself with moments of joy, whether that's going to a movie, going out with your friends and so forth, your stress, anxiety over time is simply going to creep up, and your ability to attune and use your mind to think about what's best for the child will start to diminish. So, to the fuel on the fire. Here's the thing. If we put together a carer or worker, the one on the left, whose stress and anxieties are so high they haven't got a lot of room for attunement and reflection, and just think about that attunement reflection, just using your mind to say, what's the best thing for me to do right now? If you don't have that capacity and we put you together, with a child or young person whose stresses and anxiety is so overwhelmed, and what you're going to end up is fuel. You're going to end up with fire. And you'll end up as just being the fuel on the child's fire. It's as simple as that. It means you're more likely to react. It means you're more likely not to meet the needs of the child at that moment. And things can very quickly end up in placement breakdown and so forth. So what we need is for you, the carer and or worker, to work with yourself so that your stress and anxiety and worries become lower. And you're only going to do this if you take some time or engage some action that's literally going to help you to do that. Now, for some people, it might be making sure if they're into yoga or Tai Chi and you're doing that every second day, that you keep doing it. It might be if you're having your relationships that are a bit wobbly, you commit to trying to strengthen those relationships. It might be if you need someone to speak to, such as your own counsellor, therapist, or your caseworker or somebody, you make sure you make time to do that. Or you make sure you go with your partner to a movie or have that regular night time where if you have Wednesday nights is just for the two of you, you keep having Wednesday nights just for the two of you. Because what I know is that if you are in that space where you have great capacity to focus on the child and to use your mind to think about what's best for the child, you actually become the water on the fire and not the fuel. And ultimately over time, and I'll tell you how long it takes a little bit later on, over time what you provide is a win-win situation. You become much more reflective, which means you're using your mind to do the work, and the child moves from just being a survivor to being a thriver. Because you're building their capacity to learn and play, to have this openness of mind and body. And there are some simple ways we can do this, and I'll give you one little concrete example. That jumping up and down, I'll stop sharing for a moment so you don't see that. I'm getting used to the stop sharing so you see me. So I'll give you one little concrete example of how important this being focused, having your mind open enough and your body open enough. So, and that also means being mentally and physically healthy, but also robust and tough in mind and body. A tantruming child, say you've got a 3-year-old, yeah, throwing tantrums, we've all had it. Now, what normally happens when you have a tantruming child, when I've spoken to carers or even workers' suggestions, we have a tendency, here's the tantruming child down here, we have a tendency to sort of go up to them and here we are at sort of 5 or 6 feet tall and the child's sort of all of 2 foot nothing tall, and we stand over them and say, now, calm down. If you don't calm down, I'm going to tell so-and-so, or when your granddad comes home, or when foster dad comes home, or foster mother, or whoever it happens to be, or I'm going to send you to your room, all that kind of stuff. We have a tendency to do that. The strange thing is we believe what we're doing is really engaging the child and show us that we're the ones in power and you need to do what the adult says. Of course, if you really use your mind to focus on the child, you would understand that the child at that moment is actually letting us know that they can't manage and look after their big feelings. It's not about bad behaviour. It's about them communicating that I can't manage these big feelings. And even if the big feelings came from you saying to them, listen, no, you can't pour the orange juice into the glass because you just make a mess. And the child has to say, there's something I want to do it. You can't. Even if that happens, the child is letting you know something. And it may be letting you know they feel a bit embarrassed because you don't think they have the skills to do it. They may feel some shame. They may just be angry that they don't have the skill level that they sort of know in their head, I probably would tip it over and cause it. But here's the thing. So rather than doing our normal stand over them, what we do is this. We create what I call 2 contact circles. Now, if I was with you in the room, I'd get one of you to come up so I could show you. But I'll get Carissa. Carissa, what I'd like you to do is hold your hand out like this up to the camera. There we go. So see, Carissa's got her arm out. That's one contact circle, an arm's length. The second contact circle, I'm assuming, is my arm's length. And if we joined our fists together, which I sort of can do like that, we would then have, okay, hand down, Carissa, we would then have 2 arms lengths. What you want to do is create about 2 arms length and a little more away from the child. And the reason for that is when you do what you do is kids sometimes lash out and you don't want to get hurt or hit. So we want to create space. The next thing you want to do is to use your mind to say, I need to keep myself in my thinking mind and not react to what's happening. And the best way to do that, as we're going to find out later, is in fact to breathe. Now, the little kid throwing the tantrum, when you sit there and just breathe, and the other thing is, if the child's lying on the floor, if you're able to get down on the floor, just get down on the floor, make sure you can get back up again. Don't get down on the floor if you're the person who might be struggling a bit to get back up. But the idea is to get lower. So if you can't actually physically get your whole body down on the floor, then find a chair and just sit on the chair so you're a little bit lower. You don't want to have this sort of disparaging energy going on where you're standing over the child, because that causes the reptilian brain to see threat. So we're two arms lengths apart, plus a little bit. All you're going to do, sit, lie on the floor if the child's on the floor, throwing the tantrum. All you're going to do is breathe. And you can breathe a little bit loudly, not like, that will sound a bit strange, but rather just to... Now this tantruming child is going to do something like this. He's going to be looking, thinking, what the hell are they doing? Because normally they stand over me and tell me to go to my room or you stop doing this noise. But all you're doing is breathing. And we'll learn a bit more about this through the series, but I know something neurologically happens in both people's brains when you start breathing. You see, it's very hard if one person is just breathing calmly for the other person who's making this reaction to keep going, because you're not being the fuel anymore. They're going to run out of fuel because you're not pumping it in there. You're just breathing. And what will happen is the kid will go, what are you doing? And at that moment, it's the first time you speak. You simply say, I'm breathing. What are you doing that for? Because I've realized when I breathe like this, it helps me to feel safe and to feel calmer. And what you're looking for is very quickly that child, because you see, the thing I know about neurologically, as soon as the child said, what are you doing? They are no longer in their reptilian brain. To ask a question, to make an observation and to think and ask a question requires you to be in the front part of your mind. So I know they've started, they're not completely out of their madness, but they have started to move towards thinking mind. And if you keep that breathing going, that means you're in that space. And what you're looking for is the child to start, during that time, to start slowly moving towards you. Now, you don't want it to be they're moving towards you with a chair or something going to throw at you, get out of the way or duck, of course. But you'll notice the change in energy. You control the energy in the space by breathing. And that piece of work means that you're in your mind. Give it a go. Every carer who's tried this has come back 100%, not 80, 70, 60, 100% have come back and said the child stopped. They calmed down. Now, it won't happen instantly necessarily, but you have to be true. You can't just do this breathing go. Now, come on, calm down. You can't talk. You've got to be quiet. You've just got to sit with the noise and the yelling and wait. If you're not putting that fuel in that fire, kid's going to calm down. I guarantee it. So, this is about you, though, about preparing your mind. How can you get yourself into a state where you are reflective? You're able to use your mind to say, what's the best thing for me to do right now? Interesting enough, behaviour change isn't so much about what am I going to do to get that, or what am I going to tell the child to do so they change their behaviour. It's really a question of what can I do now that might promote change in the other person's behaviour. What I can do now is I can breathe deeply and create 2 arms lengths space between me and the child. I can get down lower, chair or on the floor if they're on the floor, lying down on the floor throwing their tantrum. and I can breathe and just focus on big feelings I might starting to have to make sure they don't take over control of what's going on. So what I'm going to do is, this one, I've just stopped screen. Dr. Miriam Rose Ungamar-Borman, she came up with this concept, or rather didn't come up with it because it was already there for thousands of years, and she's not thousands of years old. She is Australia's Australian Elder Australian of the Year this year. So shout out to her. I'm going to give you, you don't have to type it down because I'm going to put it in the chat. What I want you to do, I'm going to copy this YouTube. It goes for about just under 4 minutes. So I'm going to get you to play it because if I play it here, you may not all get it. It may not stream to your, because it's got to go a long way all the way up there to Queensland. And I don't know what your bandwidth is like with your internet. So I'm going to copy this into the chat. If you just click on it, it will take to the YouTube. And I want you to watch it. So I'm going to allow you to watch it in silence in 4 minutes. So just to give it to you, stop sharing because I have to copy it across to get it into the. Now I'm hoping you can all, oops, escape there. Copy. Why isn't it copying? Okay, I have a little tech hit. Hold on. Tab. Bear with me. All right, I've got to find it now. I've got it up here in my somewhere. Here it is. Copy. It's coming your way. Hold your horses. Here. Oops, wrong. Didn't open that. Got all sorts of things opening on my computer. So I'm going to type it into the chat. So you'll find it. How do I type it into the chat? I've got to find the chat. Here it is. Okay, you'll see it in your chat. It's coming your way. Now, there it is. You'll all see that. Just click on that and a browser, another browser or page will open your browser and just play that. And I'm going to go, hey Siri, timer, 3 minutes, 50 seconds.
3 minutes and 50 seconds, counting down.
I'll let you play that. If you have problems with it, then I'll let you play it later on, but just have a listen to it. So I'm thinking it will have come to an end about now if you got it started straight away. That goes, I think, 3 minutes 42 seconds or something like that. So I'm going to continue. For those who couldn't, there were a couple of people who couldn't get it started, but we'll get the link to you so you can watch it afterwards. Share again. Oops, that's the wrong thing. We'll go back to this presentation. So, for those of you who watched it, there were 4 important parts to that video, 4 critical things that we need to think about if we're going to care for children. And, oops, no, I don't want to play that. That's the reason I didn't want to play it, because it will go right to the end. No, don't start again. Here we go. Right. So the first one is Miriam talks about breathe. I've already demonstrated to you how you can use breath, but I can't underestimate how important breathing is, and all of you to not just assume breathing is something we do naturally, because there are actually different sorts of breathing, and depending how you're breathing, particularly when you're around challenging kids, will determine whether you react or respond. Heavy breathing or fast breathing will engage the reptilian brain, because we're actually giving a message to the reptilian brain that says something's not right, I better do something quickly, and we're more likely to be reactive. Slow, calming and measured breathing is more likely to give a message to the reptilian brain that you are in control of yourself and have an idea what the best thing is to do next. The next thing she spoke of was about listening deeply. Now, most of us, when we think about listening, we think, oh, that means I have to hear what's going on out there. Now, this is true. It's true, you've got to listen to what's going on out there. But we as carers and workers have to get better at not just listening to what's out there, but also listening to what's inside you when you are interacting with a child. You need to understand that in your care of a child, if at that moment you are anxious, worried, feeling powerless, overwhelmed, and so forth, this is going to influence your ability to focus on the child and determine what's the best thing for you to do now. And so it's really important that, excuse me, that you develop the skill to be able to listen out there, but also listen in here, so that it helps to inform you of the best action that you take, best course of action. The next thing that she said is connect. And we will spend, one of the seminars coming up is just about that. It's called Joining Together. It's about forming relationships and how relationships form for children who have been harmed. It's not a simple thing for you to simply say, I'm going to look after you. Come to my house. I'm a foster carer or a kinship carer. You can come to my house and I'll look after you. And the child goes, oh, thank you so much. You're such a wonderful person. I love you terribly. There's actually a process that goes on, and connection, deep connection with children is critically important. We know attachment is critically important. We also know that what trauma does is sometimes breaks the child's ability to form strong attachments. And there are things that we can do to ensure that we do connect. The other thing is that you cannot hurry the river. Some of you might have heard her say that, Miriam say that. You cannot hurry the river. And what I add to that is change takes time. And it doesn't take a short amount of time. This is the thing people need to understand. If a child has lived in circumstances where their adverse childhood experiences have gone on not just for weeks or months, but for years, you can't possibly think that just because they're now in a safe household such as yours, that their challenging behaviours will change overnight. It's not going to happen. So I can actually tell you how long it's going to take. Oh, no, there we go. There's that video again. So this is about how long it's going to take if you put in appropriate interventions and you're able to use your mind to keep yourself in that focused, attuned and reflective space. In the first 6 to 12 weeks, so 6 weeks to 12 weeks, that's about 3 months, there are some small shifts in the child's challenging behaviours. How small? Sometimes they can be tiny. In fact, sometimes they're so tiny that people don't even see them, or they're so focused on noise, they don't see that. And I'll give you an example, since we're talking about tantrums, let's use that one again. A child who might tantrum several times a day, every day, 7 days a week. And you think it's not changing, they're just as noisy as they were before, but instead of 7 tantrums a day, after 6 weeks, because of your interventions and your ability to stay focused, they're only throwing 6 tantrums a day. And at 12 weeks, it's 5 tantrums a day, and the length of the tantrum is shorter. Muted myself for a moment. So the tantrums, there's fewer of them, 5 a week, 5 a day. How long they go for is less, so we've got frequency and length is less. But the noise level is still the same even after 12 weeks. And often people say nothing's changed because they just hear the noise. They haven't paid attention to how often and how long the tantrums are going through. So my invitation to you is, if you have to, keep a diary or something where you can say, great, I'm going to time this tantrum. Generally speaking, I've discovered they go for 8 minutes and then they fizzle out, and it happens about 10 times a day. And you put in place the interventions that we'll talk about through the series. And I want you to track whether or not the tantrums are decreasing in frequency, length, and ultimately, unfortunately though, noise is the last thing to come down. New adaptive behaviours emerge about 25% of the time at 3 to 6 months. And this is if you're actually putting in place appropriate interventions. If you're not putting in place appropriate interventions, you won't see this. The child will just be as challenging as they were when they first came into your care. It's if you have the right interventions in place and the people around you to support you to do it. But at 3 to 6 months, you get about 25% of the time. At 6 to 12 months, the intensity of the child's behaviour reduces and is present normally around about less than 50% of the time. So those tantrums you were seeing, instead of it being 7 a day, you might get 3 a day. Instead of lasting for 8 or 10 minutes, they might last for 2 or 3 minutes. And the noise might be reduced. You might be half as many decibels at 6 to 12 months. 12 months play, so a year down the track, pro-social behaviours become the norm and the child is okay more than about 70% of the time. Again, is you're putting in the right physical, psychological, which means cognitive, emotional, and training the child's body, strengthening child's body on a regular basis through that time. Now, for some people, even if we think of placement breakdowns, often placement breakdowns happen in the first 6 months, even the first 12 weeks, because people have an unrealistic expectation about healing takes place for children who have adverse childhood experiences. And what I'm wanting you to do is when you're going to start this business from here on, you have to have reasonable expectations of yourself, but more importantly, reasonable expectations of the child's capacity to change their behaviour. So the mind is tool. I said before, the only tool you have is your mind. Now, when I went to school, teachers had their minds and they also had their cane as their tool or strap. The nuns, when I went to first Catholic school I went to, they had straps, and then I moved over to the state system and the teachers had the cane. So they use that more often as the tool of choice rather than their minds. And I'm saying to you, we don't have canes. Some of you are going, oh, damn, bring back the cane. I'm saying your mind is sufficient enough if you use it. If you use it, your mind is enough. So let's just think about the brain and the mind. So the first thing is, the brain is the physical structure. It's the thing sitting on top of your shoulders. or actually it's not sitting really, it's sitting on top of your shoulders. The cranium is, but inside there is the structure of the brain, all that grey matter. And the brain has millions of neurons. Some are dying. You lose neurons every day. Some are growing. As we get older, they don't grow as fast, but infants, huge growth, really quick growth. And it begins to slow down as we get older. The brain also controls reactions to fear and stress. It's an automatic thing. It's not something the mind does. If you have high levels of fear and stress, your brain takes over automatically, known as the stress response. Your amygdala goes fight and flight or freeze, and away we go. And the brain also, without you really knowing it, monitors and controls body functions. The only time you know about it is when your mind says, I think I need to go to the bathroom. But your brain knew it before your mind said, I think I need to go to the bathroom. Or the mind says, oh, I recognize that feeling, that's hunger. That means the brain sent signals down to the tummy and went, oh, I don't think you've got enough fuel at the moment. We better talk to the mind. So the mind goes, I think I'll go and eat something. What am I going to do? What will I have for breakfast? Yummy, yummy. The mind is different. It's at a higher level. The mind, over time, and normally we say abstract thinking hasn't come into about 25 years of age, and sometimes we put it on young people. In fact, interestingly, I was thinking the other day that, and I think this, I don't know how we got to this. We have this belief that young people almost are adults. And so we then give them these expectations that they'll act like adults. And we always say we should get young people to have their say, and young people should have their say, but we shouldn't expect that whatever they say will be the thing that we develop to help them to care for themselves, because kids at that age don't have abstract thinking. And what they think is about caring for themselves, and you just have a look at how they use social media, may not be healthy for them. So we should not have this big expectation that children and young people are going to act like adults, because they're not there yet. They don't have abstract thinking. Abstract thinking is that thing that allows us to go, if I said to Carissa or Danny, hey, make a cup of tea. Now, I'm pretty sure, in fact, for all of you, if I said that, you would go and do several things. Now, the first thing you're not going to do is plug the kettle in, because the first thing you're going to do is put water in the kettle. But just me saying, make a cup of tea, there's a whole lot of actions you already know what to do. That's abstract thinking. It allows you to take all these disparate parts, put them together and take action. And it's your mind that allows you to do that. Your mind also allows you to assess information from the outside world, the conscious part. Like when I'm looking at you up there on the screen, when I'm not sharing, and I can see your faces. I'm tracking each of you that I can see. Are you engaged? Is everything going okay? Are you moving or fidgeting? Have you walked away, etc.? My mind is just taking in place, and my mind is also saying to me, Gregory, you're feeling calm and okay at the moment and presenting. Is everything going smoothly? I'm watching the clock to make sure we sort of finish at the right time to give you a chance to. That's my mind operating. That's the way it should operate. Your mind is also basically the one that makes informed decisions. The brain can make decisions. It's again the amygdala. It says there's a Mack truck coming towards you, jump out of the way. Your mind doesn't want anything to do with that, because if you're walking across a freeway and a big Mack truck came towards you, you don't want your mind to engage, because your mind would go, oh, look, there's a big Mack truck coming towards me and it's going really fast. I wonder what I should do about that splat. Your amygdala, the brain, takes over, goes fear response, jump out of the way. And then your mind goes, oh, that was lucky. What was I thinking? I need to pay attention when I cross the road. That's how it works. And it enables choice and free will. The mind enables choice and free will. So caring for children is about the choices you make to care for them and how you go about managing their challenging behaviours and how you go about creating a healing environment. It's a choice thing. But I'm here to tell you that it takes practice and it's hard. I acknowledge it. It's bloody hard. It's bloody hard to stay focused, to be in your mind and to breathe calmly when a child might be spitting at you and saying, fuck you, you can't tell me what to do, you're not my mother, you're not my father, piss off. It's really hard to treat that as water off a duck's back. But here's the point. How you use your mind will determine how you care for a child and the outcomes that child achieves. How you use your mind will determine how you care for a child and the outcomes that that child achieves. So it's a big ask for a carer. It's not an easy job. Many people just wouldn't do it. And how do we do that? We come back to Didiri. We have to focus on our breathing. We need to listen deeply to what's going on outside there, but also very much inside of ourselves. What are my emotions that are coming up when I'm dealing with this child or young person? Even when I don't want to. Kids coming at me, screaming, tantruming, I need to connect with them. So putting them in their room is not a way of connecting. Now, it's a funny thing when we put kids in their room because child's saying, I can't manage these big feelings. And we're saying, well, go to your room and manage them for yourself. And people go, oh, it works because when they came out of their room later, they were calm. Of course they were calm, but what's the message that I've learned about adults? When I'm feeling overwhelmed as a child, don't go to the adult for help and support because you won't get it. You'll be sent to your room. We've got to remember, children don't know at this time, but particularly given because of their trauma experience, how to ask calmly, excuse me, foster carer, kinship carer, worker, I'm feeling very overwhelmed with some feelings. Would it be all right if I sat down and talked with you, or would it be all right if we went for a walk together? They don't know how to do that. In fact, sometimes try and push you away when the very thing they're saying is, please come closer to me. And finally, you can't hurry the river. You need to understand that change will take time. And so pacing yourself is critically important. Learning to pace yourself. When you have a bad day, feel overwhelmed, tomorrow's a new day. With a child, it's a new day. We start again. Or we continue the work. You know, sometimes I say, you've done the best you could on this day, tomorrow's a new day, and we continue the work because the child at some level will understand you're not trying to harm them. You've done the best you could at that time. You see, we cannot leave our children's mental health and wellbeing to chance. And I said this at the CREATE conference that I did a keynote to recently. That we need to change not just some of the language in in the out-of-home care sector. And it's not lost on me that the very thing we're saying, and that I'm going to talk to over these 6 series, about what we need to help heal children as a healing home, yet our sector is called out-of-home. So we're saying to kids, by the way, you're not in a home, you're out of home. So that's a really kind of conflicting message we're giving to children. If you're in a home, you'd be back there, but you're here, so you're not in a home. And yet we know a home is needed to create healing. And that's why I say that you need to think about this work, it's not welfare. And that's one of the dilemmas we have at the moment, that we're still focused to some extent as the sector being a welfare sector. And what we need to think about is mental health and wellbeing. That you as carers and workers are mental health and wellbeing specialists. And if I go as far as to say you're neurological reparative therapists, NRLers, NRTers, neurological reparative therapists. So we have some time for questions. I'm going to stop sharing here, see if we can get some conversation going. Now, this is the time I invite you to put on your microphones, put on your cameras. This is Q&A time, the big Q&A. So don't be afraid, unless, of course, you're sitting in the bathtub with your curlers on and you decide not to share and drinking a Chardonnay or something like that. And you say, I'm not going to show you who I am. But I can see people there, Bella and Connie and Sue and Deb and Jacob and Melissa and 5 others, it says. How do I see them? Who are the 5 others? There's Anne, and we said Bella and Carolyn, and any of you, feel free, turn your cameras on, open up your microphones, which means click the little button, you'll see a line through your microphone. Because it's QR. If you don't want to put your microphone on, turn your camera on, I'm okay with that. That's all right. I'm not going to force you to do it. I can't force you to do it because you control that part. And if you want to write a question, I'm very happy for you to write a question that you might have. So let's see if there's some conversation, or if you just want to make a comment about what we've been talking about, I'm very happy for you to do that too. So let's go. Who's got a question, a comment, a thought?
I don't know.
Who said that? Someone spoke. It's good. I like people speaking. You can turn on your cameras and turn off your mics. Oh, turn on your mics rather. Carolyn's done it. Joanne's done it. I think Neville's looking how to do it.
Can I say something?
Yes, who said that? That's Joanne. Joanne, yes, come on, say something.
You don't recommend that if a child's having challenging behaviours to put the child into timeout. You don't agree with that?
No, need time in.
Okay.
So here's the thing. If you've got, say, a group of kids, 3 or 4 kids who are all having well, let's say one of them is causing trouble, you're playing a board game, and one of them is going, I don't like the rules. It's the funny thing with our kids sometimes, very often, they'll go to play a game, say, in the schoolyard, and they'll make up all the rules. Here are the rules. Want to be in control. And then one of the rules causes that they've made up causes them to go out of the game, and they say, no, that rule's wrong rule. That rule doesn't exist anymore. So, they find it difficult because, if you lose or you're not going well, sometimes those kids, these big feelings come up and they get into a panic, feel shame and embarrassment and so forth, because they don't have the same skill capacity as those children who are not having their out-of-home care experience. So timing means this. If that child around the board game, you say it's Freddie, you say, hey, Freddie, mate, and you might be over somewhere cooking something or doing some other task. You invite Freddie to come closer to you, and you don't say, you need to sit here. What you say is, look, Freddie, I've got this real problem at the moment. I've got this task I'm doing, and I don't know how to get this part of the task done. I was wondering if you might have an idea or could help me out. And so what you're saying to the child is, I can't do this without you. Now, interesting enough, this is a little play in psychology, because I know how the brain works. Is the kid suddenly stops thinking about the game they were losing and says, oh, I was asked. Look at that. Out of all the kids, he picked me, she picked me. Fantastic. And then you allow them to help you out with the chore. When you think they're now back in their thinking mind, you then say, oh, thanks so much. That was really helpful. I think I've got it now. Couldn't have done it without you. You let them return to the game. And chances are, because they're now back in their thinking mind, they'll be okay to engage in the game. Happens again, you bring them back again. I'm still looking for mics and things. Does that make sense, Joanne?
Yes, but I was just wondering, what if it's a very explosive behaviour where they're throwing things and swearing and trying to kick the crap out of you?
Excuse me.
What do we do?
Yeah, there's the big one. So remember when I told you, if kids, or there's 2 parts to this, and one of it we'll learn a bit down the road. I'll give you a little bit to it. Is you need to read the signs when children before they explode. So this is not about kids have gone, they've got the chair and they're about to throw it at you, and you go, oh, could you come over here and help me stir the soup? Because you're going to get the chair thrown at you. However, it is about if you see the child come home and they throw their bag down and they stomp into the lounge room, you go, oh, something's going on here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Hey, sweetie, I have to go down to the shop. Could you come down with me and help me carry the groceries?
Right.
And as we're driving in the car, so what we're trying to do is avert the explosion. But when the explosion happens, we're then into and I've got a little model that shows this, but again, it's a couple of weeks or a couple of sessions off. It shows if we can read the energy, we can intervene as early as possible. And that's what we want to do. In any of these events, you want to intervene early. But intervening early doesn't mean saying to the child, stop doing that. No, you can't.
Okay.
You have to be creative in how you get the child to change their behaviour. And as I've said, if you want a child to change their behaviour, you do something different.
Yeah.
And if you do something different, it actually forces the other person to do something different, because they might be expecting you to yell at them, and all of a sudden you don't yell at them, and their little brain goes, huh? She didn't yell at me. Joanne didn't yell at me. Ooh, what's that about? And that's how you shift it. But ultimately, if you've missed the energy, and again I talk about if you just think, oh damn, I missed it. and they're gone off and they're spitting and yelling at you, then it's simply managing around safety first.
Yeah.
Is everyone else safe? Am I going to be safe? And are they safe? But it still comes back to that deep breathing, because even when someone in energy up there, if you're not fueling it, it's very hard for them to sustain that level of energy. So big one, if got big energy, create that space, at least 2 contact circles, so that you're not going to get hit or kicked. You have to be a bit more, and don't say anything, just breathe. Now, as I often say, vases, chairs, glasses can be replaced. Relationships can't.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Okay.
Other questions?
Just to know, Gregory, what's your thoughts on, is there an appropriate age to have some discussions with, age-appropriate discussions with children and young people about their thinking brain and their emotion brain? Because I've done that with my 13-year-old. He hasn't suffered trauma, but I find it really effective. And he's pulled me up on occasions and said, we need to use our thinking brain, not our emotion brain. So I'm wondering whether it is appropriate, and at what age would you think that you could start introducing some of those concepts?
So this might surprise you, but you can do it from infancy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the reason why, you've got to be age appropriate when you talk about it. You don't say to a 3-month-old, oh, now let me tell you about the brain. Now you're using it, blah, blah, blah. But through tone and energy, you can let the child know, or the infant know. So when a child screams, you can say, oh, you're really upset. That little part of your brain down there, they won't understand it, but they'll understand your energy. A little part of your brain down there, like a little reptile's taken over and it needs something. It just doesn't know how to tell me what you need. And then I go, well, I know I can meet your need. I know you're hungry and I'm going to feed you. I know you need to sleep and I'm going to help you go to sleep. I know that you wet your nappies, so I'm going to dry you up and change your nappies. And then as they get older, at 2 years or 2 years, 3 years of age, you can get some kiddie books about feelings. There's a great series of books. And I often say, particularly with kids with adverse childhood experience, if you're going to have reading time, try and find books that are going to help them to learn about relationships and about themselves and so forth. So there used to be a group of, I'm sure you can still get them, books with emotions, when I'm feeling angry, when I'm feeling sad, that becomes reading books at night. And you'll find that kids sometimes will pick, say, what do you want to read tonight? I want the one about angry. And at that moment, they're actually telling you something about themselves. We've got to go, one on anger, let's go through it. Tell me about the last time you felt angry. Well, I was angry this afternoon. What happened? Someone's just said the bunny books. Oh, I missed what the rest of it said. I think there was a question there too. Let me just have a look at those. 16-year-old. I have had a 6 and 8-year-old who went into panic mode regularly, and we breathed and hugged them and breathed together as a tool. It has worked really well to help them regulate emotion. Fantastic, Neville. Yeah, great. Perfect. And that's exactly what I'm saying. When you connect and you breathe and take it easy. Now, here's another example of preventative work where you use your mind to take every opportunity you have to teach a child about something. So some of you, I'm sure, will go out with your child for a walk. You might go onto a basketball court and drop some baskets. Now, the difference between a therapeutic carer and worker and a carer and worker who doesn't have the therapeutic part is this. If I saw two carers or two workers on a basketball court playing with a kid, one's therapeutic, one's not, you wouldn't be able to notice, you wouldn't notice a difference. But here's the difference. The therapeutic carer worker is actually using their mind and going, I know little Tommy has problems with overwhelmed big feelings and anger and so forth. So when we play basketball, I'm going to teach them about deep breathing. I'm not going to mention anger. I'm just going to teach them about, when you take a shot, take a big breath. And then when you release out, take your shot. And I'm going to talk to them about, I'm going to teach them again and again and again as we play basketball, until I know that deep breathing is stored neurologically in their brain, and it's also in muscle learning in their bodies. And then one day, and it might be 6 months down the track, and they're having one of their tantrums, I say, hey, Tommy, remember that deep breathing we've been doing with basketball? Or, in fact, before I even said that, take it back a step, throwing the tantrum, I'll start doing the deep breathing. And when Tommy goes, what the f are you doing? And I'll go, well, you know that deep breathing we were doing when playing basketball? I heard, I don't know if it's true, that if I do that deep breathing when I'm feeling a bit, big feelings are coming up, helps me to feel calmer. Maybe we could do it together. Just a thought. And what happens automatically almost is because the child has now embedded, without their knowledge, almost unconsciously, the ability to take calming and deep breaths. And so there is a little bit of sneakiness that you have to do when you care for kids without them sort of knowing. You do stuff, you teach them stuff, and they don't know. And I often say that from your point of view, your home should become like almost the intensive care unit of a hospital. But they never know. From their point of view, it's more like Disneyland. Adults do the adult stuff, and let's let the kids be kids, but let's teach them sometimes without them knowing that we're teaching them. It's like when we're reading a book about anger or something else, relationships. They don't need to know, listen, by the way, I'm teaching you about relationships because you're not very good at relationships. So I thought we'd put together and that will teach you about relationships. Just have a look here. The Bunny Books, the Lifesaver. Yes, that was Panic Shield app is great for breathing too. Great. Someone suggested, Marianne, there's a thing called Panic Shield. I haven't heard about that. App is great for breathing. Cool. Any other statements, questions, challenges?
Well, how do you do that in a public space? Like in a public...
Karen, is that you speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, really dark. I don't even know if
Yeah,
you're there. I thought never before looked like you was out in those scary movies, and you look like you're in a really, really scary movie there, Karen.
Yeah.
So just say that again. What did you say?
How in a public space?
Yeah.
So
I love it. What are you doing in a cover, mate?
What do you do in a public space? I mean, I remain calm, but my daughter's not, so it becomes quite.
So here's the thing. In a public space, and this is really hard to do. Let's take a shopping centre where a kid goes off in a shopping centre, which is often the place they tend to go often around people. There's two things. Very often as adults, when a child goes off in a public place, we get into a bit of a panic because we think everyone's looking at us and going, what a terrible parent you are. Now, I don't know about you, but when I've seen a kid go off in a shopping centre or somewhere else in a public space and there's a parent there, normally I'm saying, oh, you poor parent, I wish there's something I could do to help you out. So we have this paranoia that people are judging us when in fact they're not judging us. So we do the same thing. Kids in a shopping centre in an aisle going, I stop, create the space, and I wait and I breathe. Do the same thing. If people come along and start interfering, you might just say, look, I really appreciate you taking your time to stop. I've got this under I'm in control of myself and it's okay. We'll just spend a bit of a minute. Now, if the child does then get back into the space, you have to make a decision about whether you stay in that space or you now go home. Even if you're shopping, you have to leave your trolley there. You have to decide maybe we need to go home because there's something more important at the moment the child's trying to tell us. And maybe they can't do in the space. Or you need to go out and go for a walk, take your trolley up to the front and go, can you look after my trolley? I've got to take Johnny out for a walk for a bit.
Yep.
So I tend not to overly change what I do in a public space unless there are people getting in the way of me being able to do it.
Okay.
But you have to, and that's where this thinking mind's so important, because you have to stop the paranoid, neurotic thoughts about you as a terrible person and that everyone's going to be looking at you saying, what a, the police, the SWAT team's going to come out of the helicopter, down the ropes and grab you and handcuff you and take you away kind of stuff. It's not going to happen. Most people will be going, you poor thing, I wish I could help out.
No, that's good.
I hope that helps, Karen. Yeah.
It does.
Right. Anybody else? Comments, questions? We've still got
I know it.
Carolyn.
It actually works quite well if you've got a child throwing a tantrum and the poor parent's trying to deal with it, you smile at the child and it shuts up like a book.
It's interesting, Carolyn, that I call that the one-handed, two-handed, and it's actually a provocative intervention, and there is a place for provocative interventions to sort of do the opposite of what they might expect. You know, they're expecting to get you riled up. Instead, you start dancing and laughing like a clown or something. Can work. You've got to be a bit careful with it because
I mean, if it's another mother's child and I'm sitting beside this 2-year-old or standing in a queue and I've just smiled at the child.
Oh, you're saying to help mother out, to help
yeah,
her out.
I've said hello and the child just stops its tantrum.
I like your thinking. I've done that too, where I've just, you know, kids crying, I've engaged and done something crazy, and suddenly the kid goes from their thinking mind, or the kid might hide behind the mother then and then come out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The other one I'm talking about is called the, and I'll come to you, Connie. I can see your question. You've got a comment up there. The other I'm talking about is called the one-hander or two-hander. And it has to fit a bit your personality, because not everyone can do this, particularly the one-hander. It's the challenging one. So the one-hander, and these come from acting, one and two-handers. The one-hander, when it's just you and there's the child, but there's no one else you can talk to, and you don't want to talk directly to the child because they're tantruming. So what you do, some of you might have seen the movie, which I've forgotten, but it starts with Julie somebody, not the American English woman, talking to her wall. So the one-hander is there's only you and a wall or a chair or a light, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. You choose something, the kid's having a tantrum, you say, hello, wall. Gee, I can see, so let's say Neville's the child, he looks about, he's about 3 or 4 by the looks of things there. We go, oh, I can see Neville's got some big feelings. I saw that, Neville. Neville's got some big feelings at the moment. He's trying to tell me something. Hey, wall, do you have any idea what that might be? And you start having a conversation with the wall. Now, what I know is when you say Neville's name, even if they're tantruming, little Neville goes, huh? What are they talking about? What's going on? And you keep talking to the wall until the... And the child might say, and if a child ever says this to you, as long as you're not a sleazebag, but if he ever says this to you, something like, you're weird, you're an idiot, you kind of go, oh, I get another medal. Because you're meant to sort of be, with children, particularly young people, you're meant to be a bit weird and crazy. But as I said, not you don't want to be strange, crazy, you want to be just weird and so forth. So that's the one-hander. The two-hander is, let's say that Carolyn and I are chatting to each other and Neville comes in and throws a tantrum. Instead of talking to the wall, I talk to Carolyn, and we're almost ignoring Neville. I'm saying, Carolyn, gee, Neville's trying to let her tell us something. I wonder what that could be. Do you have any idea? And then Carolyn goes, oh, I don't know, but I noticed that when he was out in the classroom or he was out in the backyard, he had a bit of fight with his brother, friend, whoever it was. So I reckon he's feeling a bit overwhelmed. Oh, that would be hard, wouldn't it? You know, your best mate, you have a bit of a falling out with your best mate. Oh, that would give you some big feelings, wouldn't it? And Neville's going, huh? And you have this conversation together. And it's got to be from what I call the naive inquirer or curious investigator. You're really trying to work out what's happening for Neville. He's communicating to us. I wish I could understand. We've got to try and work out what's he communicating. What does he mean? That's the two. So one, and yet again, you can only do this if you're in your thinking mind. And as I said, as a carer worker, this is your tool. This thing here. And you've got to use it. If you find yourself using reptilian brain where you're at, go to your room, stop talking to me like that. You've got to find some way of stopping and going, hold on a moment. My bloody reptilian brain's taking over. And I need to be in my thinking mind. Or you might go, you stay here, I'm going to my room. And then come back. So I just need to get back in my thinking mind. Whew. Now, what were we saying or talking about? Connie, I'm coming to you. Any tips on how to try to get children to recognise their emotions that don't only have trauma, but have possible ADHD, developmental delays, sensory issues, have 3 children aged 6? 3 children aged 6 and 3, must be twins. And how to handle them all tending to react at the same time or just after each other. I'm overwhelmed just reading that, Connie. You poor thing. Look, Connie, this may not be the best answer. I don't know your circumstances, whether you're a carer on your own with 3 kids or whether you've got someone else, a partner who's helping you out, or whether you've got some other people. So here's the thing. Particularly with children with adverse childhood experiences, it takes a village to raise these kids and to heal these kids. So,
Yeah.
Connie, with a big group of people like you have said, like lots of kids and all going off at the same time, you have to ask yourself, do I have a village around me to help me do it? Now, I don't think the style, and I'm not clear, it's been a while since I've been up in Queensland consulting, and I'm not sure what your respite system is like, or whether it's a dedicated sort of 1 weekend a month or 1 weekend a fortnight or so forth. I actually don't think that's the best respite system. They have it down here in Victoria, and I actually don't think it's fit for purpose. So I'll tell you how this happens. If you're going to really create a village around people, then what we should do is say this. I have the primary family, parents, whether it's a single parent or 2 parents. And by parent, I'm talking carers, whether you're a grandparent, a kinship carer or a carer. And then I'm going to create a village around ourselves. Now that might mean I get what I refer to as a mirror family. And the mirror family is the family that's going to provide all sorts of different support. Even the children in that mirror family might be a bit older than the children you're caring for, and they might come to do some support work with the children, even if it's some form of mentoring, even if it's helping them with their homework, even if it's taking them out and kicking a ball and so forth. The other adults in that mirror family, their job is to support you. Now that might be they come in and do your washing, or they come in and do some cooking while you're providing the care for the child. You're doing the work with the child to help them to learn things, how to breathe and how to name your big emotions and so forth. It might be that when you have your sexy romantic night with your partner that you don't want to lose, or your best friend or neighbour, whoever it happens to be, or just a friend, that they come in, not that the kids go off to their house, but 1 or 2 of those adults come in to look after on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night or a Friday night to sort of babysit. Also, those children that maybe 1 weekend a month it is, they go and spend times with their mirror family, which is a bit like going to your uncle or auntie's or cousin's place for a sleepover. And so we don't talk about it, you know, I'm saying the language is not fit. We don't talk about it, you're going to your respite carers. You're going off to hang out with Mary and Sue and their kids for a weekend. Lucky you. I'm going to miss you so much. And we stop using this language of even, you know, people come up and said, oh, who's this child? And I've heard carers and sometimes workers say, I'm their caseworker or I'm their foster carer. It's none of their business for a start, but if for some reason you thought it's reasonable to introduce them, you just have to say, this is Ben. You don't have to tell them what relationship they have with you. This is Ben. This is Mary. I mean, if they really are asking you, well, what's the relationship to you? Well, then it may be that you either say it's none of your business, or we'll talk about that when children aren't around. We'll do it sometime later. So for you, Connie, again, I don't know your full circumstances, but the one thing is, do you have enough of a village around you to help you do this work? In terms of teaching kids, irrespective of their background, about emotional literacy, there are different things you can do. One are the books that we just spoke about. Just muted myself so you don't have to hear all that. The other thing you can do is what are called emotional, create an emotional board. There are different ways to do this, but one way to do it is you do a little project together where you have the kids and yourselves, anyone whoever's in the family, take photos of each other, little sort of about this sort of shot, and you ask them just to take them of each person demonstrates 3, 4, 5, 6 of the most different feelings. Anger, confusion, sadness, happiness. You take those photos, you then get them to, in the little project, you then get them to write the words on a piece of paper. You get a plastic folder, one of those sleeves, you put the photos in, you put all the words all jumbled in, And then a couple of times a day, and you can do that. I get them to do this in schools, but you can do it at home. It might be when they get up in the morning. It might be when they come home from school and before they go to bed. And everyone does it. Someone's really tired. Somebody needs this. I've just got, oh, I'm so tired. I love it. This is what live is all about. You get everything. You take those pictures and you put them on a fridge or on a wall somewhere, everyone, including yourself, other children in the household, other adults. And then you say, you teach them in the morning to select a photo, put the photo at the front of the sleeve and the word that represents the feeling, that the predominant feeling you have now. And they may not always be able to choose the word, but they can look at the face and go, yeah, that's me, face. And then you can help them find the word. And you do it again and again and again and again and again and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And over time, they then move towards not needing the photos. They can say, I'm sleepy this morning. I'm happy this morning. I'm sad this morning. I'm afraid this morning, and so forth. So, Connie, I would suggest you talk to whoever your agency is, your caseworker. Tell them to listen to what I've just said, and you can say, if you don't have a village around you, you need to think about how you create that. And it's not always easy. I understand that, depending on whether you're in the city and region or rural or remote Australia. Neville's just said something else, and I know we have to finish because we're just a couple of minutes over. I always take the view that any, in capitals, behaviour is a reaction to an unmet need. It is about finding out what the need may be. Sorry to say that, I have to go. Thanks for, see you later, Neville, he's gone. But he's right. Any behaviour is communication. It's not good or bad. And I think I spoke about that the first week. It's not about good or bad. If you get into the good or bad dichotomy, you're going to punish kids who are bad and reward kids who are good. Wrong approach. You've just got to say whatever behaviour you see is the child communicating to you what's happening for them. They do it the best way they can. If they're smiling at you, they're probably happy. If they're throwing something at you, they're probably angry. That's what they're communicating, because they don't know how to say, I'm angry. Thank you. Good. We need to finish, I think,
Yes.
Carissa, so over to you.
I can't, there's not a time where I listen to you, Gregory, and I don't take away something new. And I've listened to you so many times. I am going to go off and watch your short clip, Destiny's Child. I have that written down, so I hope everyone else does as well in terms of a take home. I also just wanted to really highlight what Gregory said at the beginning in terms of self-care and the importance of us ensuring that we're attuned to our own emotions and regulating our own emotions so that we're then able in a better position to help with children. I'm not sure whether carers are aware, but the statement of commitment for carers here in Queensland recognises a carer's right to access counselling, and that the department and or the agency will support a carer to access counselling for anything in relation to your caring role.
Fantastic.
And I just think that's amazing, and I don't think it's something that's accessed as much as what it should be, because really that can be an outlet for you when, not just when things are in crisis, but as a way to actually support situations not getting into crisis. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. And I also wanted just to recognise what Gregory said in respect to the language that we use within the system. One of my pet hates is family contact. It's not family contact for a child. They're going to see mum or dad, or they're going to see a sister, or they're going to see a brother, and we need to normalise this language because these are children's lives.
It's a catch-up. You're going to catch up with your mum,
That's
Dad.
right.
You're going to catch up with your, spot on.
Absolutely. So once again, I took so much from this, the difference between brain and mind, what we're conscious of, what we're not conscious of. There's so many things that we can take away from today. Please register for the next seminar so that we can continue on this learning journey. And once again, on behalf of QFKC and the carers here today and workers, thank you, Gregory, for your time.
Absolute pleasure.
everyone.
See you all next time.
you.
Be safe.
Thank
Take care. Ciao.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.